Hi, hello, I'm Father Andrew.
Now, I've wanted to make this video for a while, as from my understanding, people seem to be confused on what media literacy actually is. If you look it up, the standard definition you'd usually get is, and I quote, the ability to critically analyze stories presented in the mass media and to determine the accuracy or credibility, end quote. However, this does not explain it all too well, and may make you think it's primarily about checking the accuracy or credibility of the media in question. When in reality, media literacy is about analyzing the media as a whole. Checking the accuracy or credibility is not even the end goal, but part of the analytical process if applicable. The best way I can actually describe what media literacy actually does is as follows. The ability to analyze the contents of media and understand the nature of said content. For example, if the content is factual, fictional, or a blend of the two. Its themes, messages, tropes, settings, characters, rules, continuity, etc. Its worldview and philosophy, and more. And other applied writing principles or skills if they are applicable. Essentially, in summary, the ability to look at media and understand what it's doing, saying, contains, and its validity if applicable at all. Now to actually try and give some examples. As for my first example, I have a friend on YouTube currently known as Gnome Wizard. Recently, he's been doing videos on the indie animated series Murder Drones and the various writing flaws of the show and what he likes about it, while simultaneously taking inspiration from the show, which he loves, to make his own alternate universe story called Extermination Notice, which he has also discussed on his channel. Around 4 months prior to this video being released, Wizard made a video about the final episode, specifically episode 8, and how the main antagonist, Sign, merging with the protagonist, Uzi, fundamentally breaks the show's pre-established lore and continuity on how robots infected with the Absolute Solver work in universe. I'm not going to sit here and rehash the entire video, but essentially episode 8 with zero form of prior setup gives the main antagonist several major changes to their personality and capabilities, which conflicts greatly with previously established lore and character traits from prior episodes. If you're actually interested in that video, it'll be shown in the top right corner, there'll be a link you can click on. Anyway, example 2. The movie 9. I've talked about the Fabricator, the main antagonist from this movie fairly recently. The horrors of war and its absolute inhumanity are a heavy theme present across the entire movie, and if anything, the Fabricator's design greatly reflects this idea. I also go over the lore of the Fabricator in my video on it, and other information too, so my video is more an overall analysis with acknowledgement of the symbolism and themes present in the movie, which is another aspect of media literacy. Example 3. The Avatar movies, primarily the first one. Humanity is consistently fighting for its own survival, seeking unobtainium, an ore from another planet, to maintain its systems and critical infrastructure. Without it, humanity is doomed. Meanwhile, the Na'vi, whose homeworld has this ore but don't use it at all, and never will, as using it would violate their cultural laws, the Na'vi, for context, follow a system of rules that hinders any capacity for true development beyond their crude early tribal civilizations. Humanity is constantly framed as the antagonist as the plot follows Jake Sully and his connections with the Na'vi, despite humanity desperately needing the unobtainium for its own survival and Jake Sully being a traitor against his own species. However, the Na'vi started this conflict between man and themselves by repeatedly attacking their vehicles. Jake Sully was initially sent to infiltrate and convince the Na'vi to move out of the way to avoid further violence, but Jake ends up instead fucking one of those aliens and abandons his mission, leading to it failing, which is ultimately why humanity resorts to violence, as the Na'vi are a consistent threat to their survival. Essentially, Jake Sully is the actual antagonist here. He has single-handedly doomed both species to fight and die in wars, all because he abandoned his mission and betrayed his species in the following films, such as the second and third one. There is also the implication that the Na'vi god itself is a giant planet-wide fungal parasite, using the captive minds of the dead to encourage them to stay in their tribal state, which could be interpreted as a warning about AI mimicking the dead in a more abstract sense. However, this ultimately shows that the Na'vi themselves aren't evil, they're just victims of another manipulative force that's using them. Essentially, no one side in Avatar is truly evil or the villain, but the betrayer Jake Sully, he has more blood on his hands than anyone, as he has single-handedly caused the conflicts that would kill countless human and Na'vi. However, while a part of me feels that he too was influenced by the Na'vi fungal false god, he is still autonomous and has made the decision to abandon humanity. This decision is entirely on him. This also shows that despite the writer James Cameron desperately trying to frame humanity as the antagonist and as evil selfish invaders, as per Avatar 2 and 3, in which unobtainium as a plotline completely ceases to exist and mankind is just shown to be greedy and evil for the sake of it, in reality, with a level of media literacy applied, it's clear that neither side is truly evil, both are just trying to survive a conflict caused by one man's selfishness. Example 4, semi-similar goes for Helldivers 2. The bugs in Helldivers, the automatons, and the Illumina are all just as bloodthirsty and expansionist as humanity, but are byproducts of humanity's violent expansionism in the previous game. For context, in Helldivers 1, the Illumina tried to be peaceful with humanity, but humanity discovered, in quotations, they had planet-destroying weapons, essentially pulling a USA, they have WMDs, and intervened, nearly driving the Illuminate to extinction, and the rest of them would then proceed to be pushed out of the galaxy. Being nearly driven to extinction and basically pushed out of their homes turned them into bloodthirsty, revenge-driven expansionists. Then there's the automatons, creations of the cybernetic humans of Cyberstan, made in secrecy after they were defeated in Helldivers 1. This is due to a secessionist war between Super Earth and Cyberstan, the automatons being a last-ditch superweapon sent out to build up in secrecy and one day come back to destroy Earth and humanity as revenge. Essentially, they are Skynet with dreadnoughts. And then there's the bugs. Super Earth discovered their blood could be used as fuel, primarily for faster than light travel, which led to them invading, capturing, and farming these insects. It seems to, at least to me, be implied that these bugs are somewhat sentient, or some sort of collective sentient hive mind. Regardless, the bugs eventually lashed out, escaped, and rapidly evolved to fight back against humanity, turning them into a far more voracious species of predator. And because of that, we now have hive worlds, which are just as fucking bad as you think they are. Essentially, humanity are the antagonists of Helldivers 1, but they become anti-heroes in Helldivers 2, simply fighting for their own survival, which is funny how James Cameron literally couldn't pull this off himself. Despite that, while Super Earth is certainly an evil totalitarian regime, they are nowhere near as evil as the literal genocide Skynet robots, the revengist fallen empires, and omnicidal horde of living jet fuel. Similar could be applied to the Imperium of Man in 40k, who battle literal demons, planet-consuming hive minds, and hordes of ravenous creatures. But it's not really fair to compare the two settings. It's also not really fair to call the Imperium of Man evil when they're going against the, quite literal, mega murder, anal rape AIDS demons of the Warp and Chaos gods. So we'll be moving on, because 40k is fucking massive, and frankly it's best left to those lore channels, which they keep arguing and having weird drama for some reason. Like, what is up with these guys? Why do they have so much beef? Your lore channels, you talk about the story for God's sake. Why are you beefing? Just do your job. Anyway, moving on. Chaos or the 40k fandom aside, example 3 and 4 both showcase conflict and attempt to make you pick a side. James Cameron's Avatar tries to make humanity the villains, but ultimately fails to and inadvertently makes their actions fairly reasonable given the circumstances as of the first movie. However, reframes them to be inherently evil in the second and third movie because James Cameron just wants to push his anti-human message. However, if we're going to forcefully compare them to the Imperium would not have even tried to be reasonable. They would have just completely wiped the planet clean without a doubt, skipping the entire conflict. Meanwhile, Helldivers 1 and 2 shows humanity to be the villains initially, then reap the consequences, and it becomes a fight for survival. Which is basically just the flip of the Avatar movies and their characterization of humanity. The Avatar movies, humans go from reasonable and just trying to survive to outright evil, while in Helldivers they go from evil to reasonable and just trying to survive. Fair to say the contrast between these two is extremely large. Again, this is all a big example of how media literacy can point out themes, characterization, and plot, and what kind of message it's pushing. At its core, Avatar is anti-humanity while Helldivers is pro-humanity. Which brings me on to example 5. Helldivers 2 can be interpreted as a criticism and parody of modern liberal democracies and how, in actuality, they are very authoritarian as their actions speak louder than words. No true democracy that cares about true freedom would actively try to suppress anyone with the, and I quote, wrong opinions, end quote, which is what the Helldivers 2 government actively does. It's why throughout the entire game we see nothing short of absolute dedication to the regime because everything else has been purged. But personally, do not get me wrong, some opinions should genuinely just be not allowed, but how can any society truly call itself land of the free and a democracy when no one's allowed to step outside the lines? This is an example of finding political messaging within media. Which, on a related note, I will say now, not everything is inherently political. I am sick to death of hearing that statement. Seriously, not everything is trying to either challenge or maintain the current system. Some media exists entirely to entertain and has no overt or subversive political agenda. Which conveniently allows me to segue very cleanly into the next section of this video. A rant I've been building up inside me for years now. And that rant is going to be about Reddit tier media literacy and the absolute bastardization of media literacy as a whole. Heads up, this section of the video will be very unprofessional and absolutely scathing, as I have zero fucking tolerance or respect for this absolutely inane, utter dumb fuckery we're going to be talking about. The first thing I'm going to say is I absolutely hate Has-Been Hotel. Not just because of its extremely lost potential, but due to how it just unseriously it handles important subject matter like sexual assault and abuse. Angel Dusk gets sexually abused by his pimp Valentino, and nothing comes of it. It's never addressed. Oh, and where Serpentius gets also dragged off and raped, it's treated like a one-off Family Guy cutaway gag. This show is incapable of handling a serious subject matter in a respectful way. Plus the show's shallow characterization, over-reliance on swearing, a lot of characters feeling the same or having the same fucking design. It is just so incompetently produced. And what especially boils my piss is how people will defend this show and entirely ignore all of this. The Reddit hive mind will glaze this shit like it's the second coming of Christ and deflect any real criticism. Fucking ironic considering the show is mostly about demons. Semi-similar goes for the Fallout show. The Reddit community flooded the fandom with tourists who do not care about the franchise's lore, writing or story, and they get all their information from the show, giving them a horribly skewed perspective of the franchise and what to expect. Or they proceed to watch their favourite YouTubers ramble about something Fallout related and take it at face value. Cough cough, Oxhorn and TK Mantis cough cough. Fuck those Reddit intellectuals, piss me off to no end. Which in turn motivates future projects to be equally if not more crap than before, but they don't fucking bother to question it. Oh, and let's not forget the absolute steaming shit heap that's the 15th Doctor of Doctor Who, played by Nakudi Gadwar, and how the quality proceeded to jump off a cliff. Just so Russell T Davies could shoehorn in as much of the message as possible. All of which was mindlessly defended by Reddit dwellers who have no comprehension of media literacy at fucking all. And they proceed to pretend that this steaming pile of dog shit was going to upend the patriarchy or some Reddit tier ideological neo-Marxist crap. All just to appease the modern audiences. And with Reddit plebeians backfeeding into this cycle of media diarrhea, circle jerking and mass consuming it as the useful idiots Amazon and such know they are, all it does is perpetuate the cycle of vapid, inane, derivative, uninspired, message-pushing nonsense, which lacks any real value as media or storytelling mediums at all. This, my viewer, is why media literacy is so fucking important. So that you can tell what you're engaging with is actually slop or not, and so you can fund the media you know is actually good and of actual quality. Because without it, you're just another pay pig, useful idiot in the eyes of Amazon and other big media companies, eating the slop they churn out without a second thought. If anything, it's clear that Redditors actively fear media literacy, because it exposes the utter slop they consume and forces them to actually think. Seriously, this Reddit tier anti-think mindset genuinely fucking boils my piss. And media literacy is important, so you don't fall into that mindset and get stuck. But anyway, in summary, media literacy is more than just what's real and fake. It's the ability to understand media and what it's about, what it's saying, its themes, messages, etc. And I'm genuinely pissed off with the Reddit tier dilution and bastardization of it, all because these companies would rather churn out message slop than make anything decent, because they know people will consume it regardless, and said people are too scared to question it. And that genuinely pisses me off. But anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope you learned something from this video and take a moment to actually think critically about the media you're consuming next time you watch something. And don't let yourself get dragged into the Reddit hive mind. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.